The whole utility paradigm is flipping upside down. There's resiliency. There's Mother Nature, who's, she's a little upset these days, right? I mean, there's a lot of things to deal with. So what's keeping you either awake at night or busy over the next 10 years? Megan?
It used to be the hardest piece of our work was the technical engineering solutions. And that is shifting. It is now 30% engineering solution and 70% business structure. And so sort of wrapping our brains around how we make that shift in the industry about being very business savvy, financially savvy, relying on partners, I think is probably our biggest endeavor over the next 10 years. I think from an owner's perspective, we're going to see increased reliance on our industry partners that understand our goals, objectives, and missions as campus institutions.
Our infrastructure is one of our biggest assets. We can distribute that thermal to everything. We're more like Europe than we are any part of the US because we're all dense and all of our campuses are close by, so leveraging that is very, very important. But that's also part of reliability. Yeah, everybody's going to hot water, but my tunnels are not big enough to put hot water pipes in there. And it's impossible for me to go and assume that I'm going to put new water pipes in throughout my campus. It's just not possible. It's just not feasible. Yeah. So it forces me to have to become more creative and leverage what we have.
The thing I keep saying for our group is that some part of our embedded assumptions are going to be wrong 10 years from now.
Yeah.
The new research 2 years from now that really looks at the actual marginal emissions, not what's the data we're using today, but more resolution on where your real marginal emissions. You can't count that in the new accounting protocol.
We haven't mentioned much about microgrids, but sure. If you think about it, there's how do we marry the thermal, the electrical together, and we talk about storage. We've seen what PV prices have done over the years. Mm-hmm. I think everyone's seeing the same things happening in storage. And storage is just electrical storage, it's thermal storage.
Right.
So I think, when we talk about microgrids, probably what's most important is the control systems and the brains behind it on how you are utilizing those intermittent sources and how you can do that most efficiently. And so to me, I think, you look out in the future, I think storage is going to be a big part of it. I think the renewables is going to continue to grow.
So it's the flexibility,
yeah.
It's resiliency, most likely through a microgrid that incorporates storage and renewables.
Right.
That's integrated with our district system. The thing we try to do is stay under the radar, right?
Yeah.
All of us want to stay under the radar. No upsets, you just do your thing, but I think everything's changing. I mean, we're going to have to drive the change, we're going to have to look for the resources, we're going to have to be the thought leaders behind the resiliency plan.
Right.
And I think that's going to be a shift.
Right, you got to be captain, you got to have your hand on the tiller.
Absolutely.
Josh, that's the world you're living in, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that keeps me up right now is how do we take what we are predicting about the future, which we know some things, but we also know it's going to change, and translate that into our decisions we're making right now. We're talking about 120 buildings that we are going to retrofit in some way, shape, or form. We're going to be in there going from steam to hot water. What else should we be doing? One of the things we've been talking a lot about is air conditioning was not something we used to do in a lot of our buildings because Hanover, New Hampshire, we didn't need it.
Right.
Climate's changing. Maybe we do now.
Right.
And so I think it's tying that kind of the future that we have some ideas about, but it's uncertain to some of the decisions we have to make right now. And I think that's where the flexibility really, how do we build in the flexibility to our current decision making?
And flexibility is the word. But part of it is also, as an industry, is how do we actually communicate? And we talk about awareness and bring things to the forefront, not just when a storm's happening, but all the successes and actually have transparency in our plans. So that stakeholders are actually aware of energy and sustainability and know what we're doing that's right. It's really about how to think about how to engage on energy and have it to being a focal point of what's good about living making something that's intangible very tangible.
Probably what keeps me awake today is refrigerant strategy.
Yes, sure.
You see some very good strategy around the refrigerant. You see some odd strategies. I was talking to somebody earlier about you've got campuses that refrigerant could be the natural gas or the fossil fuel of the campus, right? And let's move away from a particular refrigerant. but moving away from a refrigerant and making the chillers less efficient, right? That balance could be, so we see that every day, and how the next 2-3 years pan out in terms of global refrigerant legislation,
Right.
and the timing of that, because we see some countries moving 3-4 years, some are 20 years out. For an OEM, that's a difficult path to follow.
I think our focus is 3Ds, what we call 3Ds, decarbonization. Not the mainstream today is solar PV, wind, or storage. What is the next one? We believe hydrogen and green hydrogen to be the one of the technologies of the future on that side. The other D is decentralization because of flexibility and resiliency that comes with the decentralization becoming closer to the customer. And the last one, not to be undermined, is not the future, is today, is the digital piece.
Yes.
What you can do to the existing baseline, simply lumping a layer of digital solutions, managing data better, and extending life of assets or extending the productivity of existing assets.